Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Paws for My Tail podcast. I'm your host, Shepherd the Leopard, or Shep the Snep for short. Again, we have the phenomenal Wolf TK.
Hello.
TK Wolf. I'm going to make that mistake every time.
Yeah,
I love
TK
it.
Wolf. TK Wolf.
And this is the third episode we have with TK. The first episode we went into just your growing up, your background there. Mm-hmm. Second episode, we got into high school, kind of how TK first started as your persona, and some really interesting and fun stories there. Definitely recommend going back and watching those two if you haven't yet. For this episode, we're going to start going into post-high school life and kind of how college happened, and then kind of your first foray into the actual furry community in a non-online sense, if we get that far. So with that, what did the end of high school look like? Like, what's that transition between high school and college look like for you?
So for me, it was pretty much just an intense study period. I knew at the time that I wanted to get into programming, because I was still always enamored in games. Math and science were always my strong subjects. And I was hoping to get in. Yeah, I wanted to be a programmer. I wanted to make games. And I wanted to get into a good school to do that. So I was kind of just buckling down for the first half of that senior year. Doing my studies, getting the SATs going. Actually, I remember, I think that was one of the first years when they started introducing other types of tests. I'm a little bit vague on this one, but we were still doing a 1600 max score for SATs. But I remember I had to teach myself a bunch of like physics to meet certain requirements to take extra tests. I think there were supplemental tests in addition to SATs to just try to get myself a leg up. Also, part of the goal was to get scholarships, because finances were still pretty tight at the time. I remember, it's actually kind of funny. When I first took the SATs, I think I got, I want to say a 10,000 something out of 1600, maybe low 11s, somewhere in that range. No, I think it was 1000 something. And my mom looks at the scores and she says, "You can do better." And I was so mad. I threw a little hissy fit. I was like, "What do you mean? This is my best. I tried my hardest. Why is it never good enough for you? Blah, blah, blah." Later on, she says, "Okay, I'm going to make you a deal." Something like, I think you can get at least whatever amount. And for every so many points above this, I'll give you like $1 towards fun funds, and for every point 100 past that, I'll give you $2 towards a fun fund.
Oh wow!
And so on.
I mean, there is a good amount of points that you could start increasing, so that could be considerable, pocket change if you did well.
Yeah, I don't remember what the scale really was, but either way, being a high schooler with just some part-time jobs, I think it had the potential to hit 3 figures, which was, pretty daunting. So I buckled down. I studied really hard. I got, by the end of the second round, I think I ended up with like a 1490 or 15 something, low 15. I think I got somewhere in the 1500s. And when I got the results in the mail, my mom was like anxiously looking at me, opening up the envelope. And I peek the results out, and I see a high number, and I put on my poker face. I put the envelope back in, and I pout stomp up to my room, and I close the door. And so in my room, while my poor mom is probably stressing about how I must be feeling, I'm taking out a calculator and I'm calculating how much she owes me. And then she knocks on the door and she's like, "Hey, do you want to talk?" And I open the door and I go, "Here's how much you owe me," on the calculator. She was just like, she didn't expect it was going to be anywhere near that high. So she was also partly like, oh God, what did I get myself into? But it was great. We were so happy. But yeah, so that went pretty well. I was going down hard on, on all my tests. I had a small kerfuffle with my band camp teacher, or with the band teacher, because he was upset with me for not wanting to rejoin marching band for my senior year. I said, well, I got to focus on my studies. And he said, well, you're not very committed, are you? Like, he was very singularly focused. He kind of revealed his colors as being a bit of a dick.
Did he go into the whole, like, you made a commitment to not just yourself, but your entire band team?
A little bit. I had multiple phone calls from him that summer when I like trying to convince me to stay in. But anyway, yeah, no, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. So I applied to one local college, one local tech college, and I applied to Brown University, which I mean it's an Ivy League. It felt completely untenable, but I don't remember what drew me to it, or what, I don't know. I think it was one of the things that came up as a place that has really good sciences and computer science, and maybe who knows, maybe I'll make it in. And I did actually make it in there. I think I did a similar thing when I got the result letter, where I pretended I didn't get it in and then faked my mom out and told her that I did. Oops, sorry, probably not good for her blood pressure. But yeah, no. So yeah, I made it into Brown, and we were really fortunate because that was actually the first year in the history of the school that they did something called need blind assistance, where and I don't know how many of the folks listening to this know this, but a lot of colleges, I think still today, definitely back then, they would look at your finances as part of the application process. And they might say, well, you can't afford to be here, so we're just outright rejecting you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they had, for the first year, something where they... and I hope I didn't misspeak about that. Maybe I got a little bit wrong, but either way, the Need Blind program said that they are not allowed to look at any financial records when they make their decision on who gets in or not. And then after they accept you, if they accept you, then they look at your finances and they say, okay, this is how much of a scholarship we're giving you so that you're able to attend.
Yeah.
And it's not like you get a full free ride. I still had to take on student loans. But I also applied for several scholarships. I got a few of those. I was able to take I think it was like a state loan or a federal loan, something like that, which is no interest starts accumulating until after college. So between all of that, with all those things combined, with the college savings I had, with some support from my mom, I was able to, by the end of college, have only 5 figures of debt, which by most standards is only. Because it could be a lot worse. But either way, I was able to get in, which was huge. And even though it was very sad to say, not a full goodbye, but a kind of goodbye to all my high school friends, which by then, I had a decent crew of 6-7 people where we're all really close with each other. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I made that leap. It was the first time living out of state too. Yeah, it was. Gosh, college. I think college was easily some of the best years of my life. Not that post-college hasn't been great, but definitely the best years of my life up at that point, without a doubt.
So what made college so good for you? Was it just the academic rigor because you were already very academically minded? Was it just getting away from home? I assume that did you move to go to college? Did you stay at home for college? What did that kind of look like? What made it so great?
So I did move. I lived in the dorms. So yeah, you had your shitty room with a roommate, no matter whether you like it or not. You got your meal plan with the okay enough cafeteria, but hey, there's food. The atmosphere of the campus was fantastic, though. Aside from the fact that it was just very pretty, it was a bunch of kids who really, really tried their best to be good at what they did, right? There's a lot of passion in there. There's a lot of energy. Being in a fresh environment where everyone's living away from their parents, it's really exciting because you have the freedom without most of the responsibilities, which is awesome. I ended up finding this program house called Tech House. And they're not exactly a frat, but the closest analogy I could give is a frat. Imagine a fraternity minus the hazing, minus the alcohol abuse, and with a bunch of nerds. And that's basically what Tech House was. Huh. They were a really good group of people. It was just a fun environment. There was a place on campus where there's a DDR machine on free play all the time.
Oh, cool.
I would at least I think it was on free play. Maybe I would have played a lot more if it was on free play. Anyway, either way, it was either free play or cheap enough. So I got a lot of exercise there. Just having the freedom to try a lot of different things out. It was awesome. We got up to some shenanigans at Tech House too. We had some events. We had an event called Drop Night, where we took a bunch of our old monitors and we put a bunch of canvas type material like tarps on the ground. And we took our old monitors and we threw them off the balcony from the second floor to the first floor. And that was Drop Night. That's it. That's all there is to it. But it's just weird, goofy stuff like that. We definitely wanted to be the cool kids. We were right next to the art house, and they did not think we were the cool kids because we weren't the cool kids. We were cool in our hearts. I'm trying to remember if there's a few other cool stories from there. They had some really interesting projects that they did. Like they had some, I don't even know how they did this because this was the year before I joined, but they made a version of Tetris that you could play with the lights on a building.
Really?
Like they had some circuit board that connected to I don't remember if it was the actual physical lighting in the room or if they set up like a network of, LED lights on the windows or something. But for a couple days, they had this installation where you could play a game of Tetris and the windows would light up corresponding to where the blocks were. They encouraged having projects. Like there was a wood workshop in the basement. And one year we built a bar. Just like a wood bar with a Tech House logo where we served non-alcoholic drinks because it was against the policies of the group to spend money on alcohol. We were really, really cool. We had a little dance party in there where we had a rave, and there was one very, very passionate person not in the house who was telling everyone exactly how they should rave and what they should be doing with their glow sticks, which we all took at face value and all said, yes, this is how we're going to do it. So it was pretty good times. I got into, being able to take programming classes was so cool because that was really getting into the thick of it. Also extremely difficult, really time consuming. I think between the teaching assistant work that I did from my second year on to get extra funds to support it, and all the work studying, going to classes and doing projects, I was averaging at least 60 hours a week.
Wow.
Yeah, crunch time would go up to 80. So, excuse me, it was intense, but everyone was sort of in the trenches together on it. Gosh. I think I was still doing message boards at that point, but definitely getting more distant from those VG Cats and DDR forums.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So life was going really good. Did that kind of alter your interest in furry related things? Like, were you on those message boards as much? Were you interacting kind of with those things? Or did you have so many other things going on, so many positive things in your life where that just kind of fell away for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, there was I was still on the boards much less than before, because just living life was pretty it was pretty time consuming. um and yeah, I was still there here and there. I think my furry identity was still a part of me. I remember my screen name in the group, or my email alias at Tech House was Wolfie. So there was that. I'm sure there definitely were still instances of occasional comments about furry and like furries. So it still kind of stayed just below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually one of the folks at Tech House is actually someone that I'm friends with today. Yeah, and actually, yeah, we can call out names for positive things. Fennegus, super wonderful person. She was just very kind to me. There was one year when actually I think at some point she had noticed that my DeviantArt account had a furry icon and had messaged me. This might actually have been after college, like just after, because we both ended up moving to California afterwards, but we'll get to that. But yeah, we had a conversation at some point where, you know, they revealed that they were also furry, and we were just like, oh my God, what the heck? That's so cool.
The joke always is, and it tends to ring true, but like furries are the ones that run tech. And so you were in a tech-centered major, which is also what our previous two guests were in as well. So it's tracking true.
Yeah.
But did you run into any additional furries in college, or was it just the one?
So I eventually ran into one other, but I have a little side story that you just reminded me of. So in the basement area, there were tons of pipes on the ceiling, lots of different pipes of different sizes. And we one night had this little, we just played a little joke thing, or we made our own little meme where we started labeling all the pipes as this was around the period of time when some politician made the statement, the internet is not a big truck, it's a series of tubes.
Yeah.
Right. So we labeled all the tubes of what were the things going through the internet on those pipes. And I remember the biggest one, someone just wrote furries, like furries that way, this thing this way. Yeah, it was great. But anyway, I don't think I met any other furries until actually the year after I left college, when I eventually came back for a visit. And there was someone who was very outwardly furry. And I remember really, really admiring and appreciating the fact that they were just unabashedly furry and people accepted them. It was really encouraging to see that, you know, I mean, he would make light of it. He would make jokes. He'd be like, ah, yeah, you gross little flesh bags. I'm not interested in you. Give me the fur. Like, and it's one of those environments where people just accepted it. And that's not something I'd really seen too much of. I was always still on the side of you know, fear or concern around that, or just being in a place where it's fine to keep it under the surface. But yeah, no, that was a neat little experience. Yeah, props to them. Props to anyone who's comfortable enough to do that, and, you know, or pushes himself to do it. Anyway, don't force yourself, but, you know, it's awesome when you do.
But it is always fun to see somebody that is confident in what they love. Yeah. Whether that's furry, obviously, or anything really. Like, we all love to see people that have things that they love and that are confident in them. And so, like, I 100% agree. When I see people that are just like, this is who I am, and they're just doing their thing, love it. Yeah. Absolutely love it.
And it can really pave the way. Like, it can open the door for people who are less confident to feel safer in those spaces.
Yep. Well, cool. It sounds like college was a very positive experience. Is there anything else that you're kind of thinking of? It was, I'm assuming, 4 years of it. You got a degree in computer engineering, computer science.
Computer science, yep.
Any cool projects you worked on with that degree?
Oh my gosh, yes. So again, with the motivation of making, I wanted to be a game designer. I wanted to be a game developer. Anytime that there was any sort of an open-ended programming related project, I used that as an opportunity to make a game. to whatever capacity I could. So one year, I don't know if anyone watching or listening is familiar with Disgaea, but it is a tactical RPG, like a grid-based battle system where you move characters on the board. Their attacks have different patterns that affect different tiles. Some things may push enemies or move them around. There's a complicated level up stat system. And me and a couple I don't know, friends, but classmates, got together and basically did a lightweight version of that game. I think we were doing Java at the point. But yeah, we ripped Sprite out from the game, obviously, because we're programmers and we're not selling the game. But we ripped the art, we made our own goofy story. I just programmed all the details of the combat system. I was leading that because I was the one who'd played this guy and was like rallying people, being like, "Yes, let's do this. It's going to be a cool project." Mm-hmm. There was one year when this was when the Wii was out. I have a cute story about that as well. But anyway, when the Wii was out, I did an independent study project, which was a whole semester long with a few others, where we had figured out how to take the Wiimote and the Joy-Con, Wiimote and the Nunchuck, and get those inputs read by a computer. So you have like the XYZ of how it thinks you're orienting the controller. Mm-hmm. And we made like this robot mech game where you hold the two controllers like twin sticks. So, turn right, turn left, walk right, and so on. So you could control it with that. And we made some like gesture drawing recognitions where, if you draw a circle, it'll drop a mine down. Or if, I don't remember the exact moves, but some sort of a gesture recognition kind of system in there. It was a lot of fun. One of the students made this, and stop me if I'm getting too much into tech details, but he made this system for buildings to get destroyed where the building was a rectangular prism initially, and he made some system where it could dynamically, when broken, sort of change the mesh to be a bunch of smaller pieces that crumble down. Just cool stuff like that.
Yeah, and this was all programmed by hand. It wasn't like using an engine that somebody else had figured all this out ahead of time. This was all just you guys in a classroom figuring it out together.
Yeah, no, there is no Unity. There is no RPG Maker. This is from scratch with code. Mm-hmm. In fact, we learned from the bottom up, at least through a program. Here's how you make a processor. Here's how you make something that can add and subtract and has very simple memory. And I learned, here's how you make the mathematical equations that define a cube or a sphere or a cone. And here's how you make it with different degrees of granularity. So it's like there are more points in the mesh that define the shape. And here's how you put them in a hierarchy where if a bunch of shapes are connected and if this is the shape, and my fingertip's the hierarchy here, if I rotate from my fingertip, the whole wrist moves with it. Like how to make that system where a shape affects the shapes underneath it in the hierarchy, and how to do ray tracing, like calculate how the light goes from a point in the monitor to an object and how light sources in the scene reflect off of that, and all of that from the bottom up. I don't remember half of it.
Totally got way too techie there. Just went.
That's fine. We can cut that down.
No, I'm going to have everybody be just as unknowledgeable as I am. Continue though.
Did you know? Did you know that I'm a nerd? Just so you know, I am. But it was really fun. And I also had some opportunities to do some VR related work. Brown has I think both, this thing called The Cave. And it was an 8-foot cube space with projectors behind, what was it? Like in the front and on both sides, there were projectors, like backlit projectors. And there was a projector above that would cast an image down onto the floor. So you had 4 walls where there were projectors that were showing the image of the 3D space that you're in. And there were glasses that you would wear, similar to the early 3D movies, that like it would filter between the right and the left eye vision, blocking one eye out at a time at a fast enough rate that it feels like 3D. So I, again, VR, my thing. I love it. So there were a few things there. I had made a proposition to the lead researchers who were working on that. I said, hey, what if I intern with you for a summer and then I do an independent game project in here for my next quarter? Or maybe it might have even been the other way around. I don't know. But like, what if I do an independent study project and then now that I'll have some knowledge with it, I can do intern work for you and I'll be already trained up. It was probably that. Yeah, I made, with the help of, I believe, 2 other classmates, I made a virtual reality game for a project there. And
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And this was, 2006-ish? So again...
So VR was far from being a thing at that point.
VR was not a thing. VR games did not exist. But I made a game where you had a sword, you had a shield. The shield would repel enemies. The sword swings. It does damage based off how fast you swing it. You can put your hands behind your head, and it switches to a bow and an arrow. You can knock it. You can pull it back. It launches based off of how far you pulled it and the trajectory that you had. And we had like a magic casting system where you like draw shapes in the air with the tip of your sword, and those shapes made like a language of spell symbols. So you had like a diamond shape, and you could combine that with a triangle shape, and each one of them had things that they would do. Like a lightning shape would make an AoE lightning attack, and the diamond would leave a diamond that stays in the world, and if you shoot an arrow through it, it splits out 3 ways. I didn't work on the details of that engine, but like having all those pieces come together was so exciting. And we actually got published in a magazine, like a technical, I don't remember the details. It was like a graphics and technology magazine. But we actually got a published article in there for a few pages about like the game we made with it. Yeah, it was rad. It was so cool. And of course I used that in the future for application material when I was applying to jobs.
It sounds like you were being prepared for just an amazing career in virtual reality and games, which is exactly what you wanted to do, right? Like that's exactly how this happens. You get really good in college and then you go straight into the workplace and everything's peachy.
Yeah. Yeah. So the process for getting a job from college was an interesting one. The game space was not practical to get into at all. Pretty much all jobs for games wanted senior engineers. They wanted people with really specific experience. They wanted people who had worked on published titles and nothing else. So that was a bit of a slap to not a slap to the face. It was a wake up call, a smack back to reality that, well, unfortunately, not super easy to get into this. And it's not like there weren't options. I applied to a bunch of places. I think ultimately I was able to get 2 job offers by the end of, the wave of applying to a whole bunch of different places for the sort of first out of college job. One of them was actually a position from Microsoft, but it was working on Microsoft Office on Microsoft Word specifically.
Oh, that sounds riveting.
Yeah, really exciting. A product that hasn't changed for like 20 years. I was not thrilled. Would have been great for job security. Would have been great for finances. I had a feeling that wasn't going to be a good fit for me. I got an offer at another place, which was a file systems database company. Imagine like OneDrive, like Dropbox, that type of
Okay.
technology, and working deep in the tech layer of that whole thing. So I ended up taking the job there because a few friends from my previous year had a job there, and they said they liked the environment. Even though file systems was the one class I didn't take in all of college. The course was CS 168, and the joke was that it takes 168 hours a week to make it through that class.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't remember what the actual number of hours in a week are. It's less than 168.
It was incredibly intensive, though.
Ridiculously
and this was
intense.
the type of job that you were getting that is intensive to begin with, but you weren't prepared for because you had never taken that class.
Whoops, decisions were made. But they thought I was up to the task. And yeah, they were in California, by the way. College was in Rhode Island. So this was me moving out on my own. I started out I rented a motel for a month. Just to they had some arrangement for like general like summer interns and newly relocated folks that this one hotel or motel just had some arrangement where you could get relatively cheap rent for a month or two. And going from like my happy land where I have a bunch of friends and passionate driven people to you are in this tiny little sublet on your own was a real shock. And I'm sure many people have gone through that. But yeah, I was just alone all the time all of a sudden. Having to start a new life for myself, having to deal with getting groceries, getting dishes, dealing with finances, paying off loans. And the job itself started out okay. But it wasn't really clicking. It wasn't meshing. I was doing enough to get by, but I felt like I was putting in this much effort and getting this much result.
Yeah.
I felt like I had gone from a brilliant student to a below the bar middling, employee. I think I did also have a bit of I definitely had some imposter syndrome even coming into that. Because going from a place where I am, a really smart kid in high school to suddenly being surrounded by a ton of people who are brilliant, there was a lot of feeling like the dumb one, and just feeling like, oh wow, now I am the pool has gotten bigger and now I'm just some guy. I'm not the guy who's ahead of who's a year ahead in math. I'm not the guy who's acing all his classes. I'm the guy who went from being the math guy to getting an F in math, which actually the first class that I actually failed in college was math.
Oh,
it was oh god, what is it? Calculus 3. It was tough. Never going to do it again. I'm done with math. I did my time. Good.
But yeah, so you finished college in Rhode Island. You move all the way across the country. So your small family that you were close to are now largely inaccessible, except for via video calls and stuff, or phone calls. You've gone from a wonderful college experience to being in this little place alone in California, probably no friends, and in a work environment that is draining your life away. Like you're putting in so much effort, just getting nothing in return. Sounds wonderful. Sounds, the only reason I bring that up is because I think that there's actually a lot of people that encounter this, where college, you get a sense of what you want to do, a sense of what there is, but then when you actually enter real world, the workplace, it's drastically different from what you thought. You're not prepared for it. And your initial experience with it oftentimes is lonely, way too much work where you're burning yourself out and just depressing. And I don't know if that's kind of what I'm gathering from this, but what did you do if that was the situation?
I was peachy. It was fine. It was no big deal. No, it was tough. It was, I mean, exactly as tough as difficult as you're painting it. It's a shock to the system, right? You're dealing with a ton of new responsibilities. You don't have the same support network that you did. You are on your own. And that's when you realize, fuck, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm just here. So yeah, it was a shock. And it wasn't too bad at first. And I did, by the way, I had some connections from online friends that I maintained. So there was that. There was that somewhat of a network there. And I did end up renting a home because I will never live in an apartment because, let me rephrase, I will try to not live in an apartment if I can, because that was how I had to live in Israel, and there are lots of negative memories connected to that. So I found a few people to rent a house with, two of whom I just went on Craigslist to find housemates, looking for housemates.
That's so risky.
I did. We met up in a coffee shop, we chatted a bit, and we said, okay, let's do it. I believe I had one friend who I'd been friends with online for a long time, who wanted to move to NorCal. And he joined me in that as well. So I had one person that I knew, two people who I didn't know. Shockingly, things actually went pretty well on the whole.
Oh, good.
I mean, about as well as you can expect for a bunch of bachelors living in a house for the first time. There were no fires. There was no angry anything. We didn't always mesh all the time, but it was fine. Generally pretty good. So there was that. There was at least something positive there. But yeah, work just got more draining as time went on. Not just the fact that it wasn't something that I was happy with, but the fact that I felt myself drifting further and further away from my goals and from my dreams. I remember going to GDC, the Game Developers Conference, which was nearby. I went there to, they had, I don't remember the name of what they called it, but there was something specifically for people looking for jobs. Like whether it was an internship or whether it was for people trying to break into the field. And it was the most discouraging thing I had ever experienced career-wise.
Oh, no.
Because I'm coming in here saying, I'm working for this really good tech company. I've made all these game-related projects in the past. And every single place I went to would just look at the resume and either say, cool, and put it in a pile. Or they would say, "Oh, but you have no published games. You have no game experience. We'll take a look. We'll get back to you."
Yeah.
And this place, for a game developer conference, for people to apply to jobs, had everyone just saying basically, "Go fuck yourself," politely. Yeah. Kindly go fuck yourself. So between all of that, I was just thinking like, man, I'm stuck here, and definitely had diminishing confidence. So I didn't feel like I had the ability to go somewhere else. I felt like I had to somehow make a name for myself to get somewhere. And it just felt like I was in a rut, and it felt like there was no way out.
Which is one of the worst places to be when it comes to mental health, right? Where you just feel trapped.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what ended up changing that? Did you was there anything that helped get you out of that funk, that helped kind of give you a fresh view on life, that increased your motivation to make that happen? What changed?
Yeah, I got good. No, I'm just kidding.
It was a skill issue.
Skill issue. Get good, forehead. No. So, the housemate who was a furry friend of mine, he had been telling me repeatedly, there's this local convention, I think a local furry convention, and I think you would really like it. You really should go. And I think the first 1 or 2 years that he had suggested this to me, I said, no way, absolutely not. That is where I draw the line. That is where the freaks and the creeps and the weirdos go. Because again, up to this day, the only thing I had known about furries, the only thing I had heard about furries were the worst examples, probably often not even real examples, but it's what people had told me. You know, that I thought that fursuiters were literally delusional, that people who fursuited were people who could only handle interacting with others through you know, this mascot type personality. Also, it didn't help that at that time the majority of fursuiters did treat it with like this silent mascot type approach, which, being on the other side of it, I totally get now. You're portraying a character, and you're portraying a character in a certain artistic style, right? With a certain sort of aesthetic with it, like like a sports mascot. But from the outside, that's a really kind of impenetrable view because there's no communication. You know, I'm looking at a video where someone's picking up a remote controller being like, "Burr, burr, burr, burr." Like, what are you doing? This is not compelling me to go to your convention.
So this is interesting though, because you have been in furry circles for quite a while at this point. I mean, you had your persona developed when you were in high school or even younger. You've been through college. You've still kind of been online and been at least familiar with a lot of these circles, if not participated somewhat online. But yet these were still the views that you held, even as someone that was, maybe you didn't consider yourself furry yet, but you were definitely furry adjacent, and you still had these views. So that says something about the amount of just that bias of information that you had always been given about the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hadn't interacted with anyone who had been part of that in-person community. I'd interacted with artists. I had interacted with plenty of people who, you know, were strictly online. And it's also important to keep in mind that, you know, I've been involved in the offline fandom for like 15 plus years. We are the minority of furries. And maybe that's changed more. That probably has been changing more and more as time progresses, as more people hear about furry in more natural and accurate ways. And it is definitely a more open and inviting space than it has been before. Not that it hasn't been uninviting, but you know, it's easier to, I think, to relate to, and there are more examples that you can see to not feel like you're diving in blind if you give it a shot.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that. I had the stories of how fursuiters were the weird sex perverts, and they were the delusional people who had serious issues and serious problems. And I had the impression in my mind that if I would go to a convention, I would just be the most uncomfortable human being that could be existing at that time. But by the third year, or the second, whichever one it was, by my third year of employment, I said, okay, fine. You know what? I'll give it a shot. I'll go. And actually, one of the things that really was a tipping point for me was a video that a furry had released. They had a fursuit, like a fox fursuit, and rather than being in this strict mascot pantomime presentation, they were just kind of hanging out with their friends. They were chatting. They were using their voice, their words. And it was the first time that I looked at a fursuiter and said, they just seem like a chill dude. They're having fun. This seems, maybe I can relate to this in some way. Maybe there are some furries that won't creep me out. Side thing as well. Fursuits look a lot better now. Like, I super appreciate and admire the passion and the craft work and the talent that went into making those earlier fursuits. Yeah. But you have people who are working with way less resources, who don't have a built-up knowledge base of years and years of people sharing knowledge, right? You have people who are doing it by themselves in the basement or wherever they're doing in their room, who, you know, they're making their artistic vision come to life. But you look at fursuits from 20 years ago, and there's a bit of like, oof. And again, no disrespect. It's literally just, they did a fantastic job for what they had available to them.
Yeah, and during the time, like, there was some remarkable fursuits for that time.
Yeah, and I think there are plenty of examples of really nice looking fursuits from back then. But I think that, again, being given the worst examples over and over, you see the stuff that makes you cringe. And, you know, again, like, I don't encourage doing that. See the fact that there's a lot of passion and a lot of commitment and a lot of talent and hard work behind that. But back then, not being connected to the actual furry community and just this very toxic webcomic form and a few friends and nothing else. Yeah, that's what I was expecting from it. But anyway, so yeah, I go to the convention. I spend the first couple days just trying to dodge every single camera because God forbid my face gets captured somewhere and a colleague sees me, human TK, in a furry convention. They'll fire me, or it'll work against me, and someone will deny a promotion. Or
your face will end up on the news, and your mom will see it.
All that. I walked around. At first, it was weird, and I did definitely have a lot of feelings of discomfort that I had to face. It's definitely a more queer place, which is great. But me at the time definitely had a lot of difficulty being around that, because again, this was the thing that I was told. I was told, don't be this. Like this is like, yeesh, yikes. You don't like, yes. No one's gonna like this.
So for your first con experience, you probably still had a certain high level of homophobia that you were just taught and had just growing up from just being around different people.
Yeah, I mean, there was that, and of course there still was the side of like I still liked a lot of, teasy, suggestive furry art. So it was very much, it was this combination of like being confronted with something that I wasn't really ready to be around. But I mean, no, I'd say I was ready because I didn't freak out. I didn't say anything negative towards anyone. I felt uncomfortable and I went through it. But it also forced me to confront a few things like, oh, wow, actually, that suitor looks, hold on a second. Anyway, back to reality. So some conflicting emotions. But as the con went, what I started to notice more was just the fact that people were just happy. People were just happy being nerds around other nerds. Like the level of judgment was so much lower. Not lower. I didn't feel any judgment. It wasn't there. And I had this really key, really pivotal moment, like one of those like turn on a dime, light bulb switch, everything makes sense kind of moments, where there was a fursuit dance competition going on. I hadn't known about it or whatever. I was in the hallway, but I peek my head in and I see someone dancing and they're looking great. They're having fun. The audience is cheering. I see another one come on and I watch the whole act from beginning to end. And I wish I remember their name. I'm not going to guess the name because I'm going to get it wrong. It's been a while. But it was this cute black and white, like tuxedo cat fursuiter. And he's doing a dance that's throwing in like 10 different styles, just switching between all these different moves. And it's so joyful and happy and bubbly and bouncy. And I have this moment, this thing click in my mind where I'm saying, wait, they're performing. Like these people that I was afraid of for so long and looking down on, saying that, oh, like they're these delusional people who are living in some weird alternate reality, which I'm like, as if I haven't been, having my furry side reality. But it just clicked that they're performing. They're wearing these giant sweaty animal bags to make people smile. And like to entertain and to collectively make this fantasy into like a weekend where it is a reality, so we can all have this amazing, like surreal shared experience together. And it just, I started looking back and everything made sense. Like it's just, my brain was like processing and rewiring all these negative things I thought as, no, they're not. They've been warped. It's been presented wrong. I've gotten all the bad, and I haven't seen that there's so much heart behind this. And I was just so compelled by it all of a sudden. And yeah, the rest of the con, I was going around, and rather than being like, it's a fursuit, I'm going to go this way, I was seeing some of them like give hugs, and I was like, I want a hug. And they gave me a hug, and it was the warmest, softest, fluffiest hug I've ever felt. It was so good. I saw, there were the people who were holding like free hug signs, and usually there were fursuiters, but my dorky ass self went to the CVS nearby, got a board, got a marker, wrote free hugs, and just even without a fursuit was going around with like a free hug sign, be like free hugs, and like fursuiter and not, people were just so happy and receptive to it, and it was one of the most fun and freeing things I felt. I went to the fursuit dance, and I was kind of wallflowery for a while, but by the end of the night, I was in the center of the dance floor, just going absolutely bonkers, probably looking like a dingus, but so were half the other people there, and we were all having fun. Like, I remember there was one suitor who like made it a point not to always be facing the stage, but to turn around and look at the people around them and be like, yeah, go, go, go. And like, I felt so included, and it was just a magical experience. Oh, so good.
This might age poorly, but there is that Nightcrawler comic where it's like, furries are cool. They throw the best parties. It sounds like you were having your furry party moment or furry convention moment where you're like, everything I knew was wrong, and this is the greatest experience of my life.
The best way I could be proven wrong. I will happily eat that hat. No, it was really, excuse me. It was really eye-opening. And I remember like when the weekend came towards a close, I remember I went to the concierge, and I was like getting all like misty-eyed and teary and crying a bit, and I was like, can I have some pen and paper to like to write a note to say thank you for hosting us here, because I had such a good time, and it was so important to me. And like I write this huge thing with like teardrops falling on it, and I just like write a thank you to the staff for that. And then like eventually there's nothing left to do, right? And I start leaving the hotel, and like my knees start to feel weak. Like I feel like I don't want to leave. I don't want to go. And I make myself go, and I sit in the car, and I just started bawling my eyes out, because all I could say to myself was, I don't want to go back. Because all the reality of everything else my life was at that point was, I hated my job. I didn't like where I was, and I just sobbed until I was safe to drive home. And it really hit me, not just being sad though, but the combination of feeling that I don't like my life and I've just experienced the happiest moment of my life came together and saying, I need to make a change. I will make a change, whatever it takes. I have to change this. And it took it took a while to get there, but I decided that I had to quit my job. Like, and it was a risky thing to do for sure. I think in hindsight, probably I should have just went straight to applying somewhere else first and at least trying that route. But, I made the commitment that I was going to quit my job and get into games, or at least make a stronger effort, make another effort.
Yeah.
So I found, kind of by happenstance, I found this really small indie studio of like 5 people. So like pure startup, who they were working on a game. And I said, hey, I'll work for you for free. Just,
oh wow.
Because I needed something on the resume. And like this is like very much a tactical decision, right? Companies care about what's on your resume. If you have a block of pure unemployment and you don't have anything to say about it, it will look bad. And it sucks. There may be great reasons for it. Generally, it will look bad. It will be a hurdle you have to pass to get your interviewer or resume reader to see that you are worth it over the other people. So it was something that was actually working on a game, and I was interested and excited for that. And B, it was something that even though I wasn't getting paid, I could, chew through the savings I'd built up and technically not technically, very validly be building work experience. And It was a bit of a shit show. They were working on a card game, which was a really cool idea. It was like a digital card game where you put your cards on a grid and they have different movement abilities. It's strategy RPG territory here. They have like different values for your attack and defense from the front or from the sides or from the back. So there's these cool, concepts that you can put in here. But the code was a train wreck. The funds went into commissioning artists for art on the cards rather than getting the base in there and getting some funding. So needless to say, that job didn't really go anywhere. But what it did do, aside from draining my finances, was it gave me that resume fodder. And eventually I started applying to some other jobs in the area. And you guys aren't going to believe this one, but I ended up working for Zynga, the Farmville game, the game which I loathed. I hate Farmville today, and I hated it back then. Mm-hmm. I have a little more respect for it because I understand the work that goes under, behind the scenes, what goes in to make it happen. But especially back then, Zynga had a terrible reputation for really grimy business practices. But it was also a game company that was offering me a job. So I took the job position. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a lot better than I expected. They were pretty darn good to their employees. They were in a phase of making themselves a bit less shitty as far as business practices goes. Still shady, to be honest. Still built off of spamming people's Facebook walls with requests and all that jazz. But I got to get some game development experience under my belt, some proper experience. Yeah. I ended up staying there for almost 6 years.
We'll pick up kind of from there in the next episode. But before we finish off, I just want to make this kind of point from what you have just illustrated is you went from trying to do what everybody had always told you to do, mm-hmm. Go through college, get yourself a career, the whole 9 yards of that. And when you did that, when you just kind of followed what everybody was telling you to do, or what you assumed was what, the pathway to success and happiness was, you weren't finding it. And it wasn't until you took that leap to go a little bit more cringe into your furry convention that you finally found that happiness you were looking for post college. And that really kind of was the tipping point for you making these leaps to kind of get yourself in alignment with what you really wanted in life, who you really wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. It turns out the thing I needed was what everyone told me I shouldn't be and shouldn't do. Yeah. Yeah, it's really crazy to think about that. And if my friend hadn't convinced me to go to that FurCon, I don't know if I ever would have. I don't know how my life would have ended up. And yeah, I really fell in love with the furry community. I found out that there was a local furry event. I think it was called Crack Chicken, where, to be honest, it was like 30 furries loitering in front of a store. It was every Thursday or Friday night or something. And there was just this chicken wing store, which bless them, for whatever reason, they were okay with a bunch of furries just loitering in front of their stores, wearing tails, chatting with each other, and maybe 1 out of 4 people actually ordered food and went inside to order food. Oh God. Oh, cringe. But it was a good networking spot. I met a couple friends that I'm still friends with today there. It was really cool. I met some people that I had, I don't know if I met people that I met at cons there, but I might have. Mm-hmm. But it became a meeting point. It became a place to find others more like myself. I found one of my future housemates there, or future at the time housemates. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was great. And I was making connections with people. I was making friends. I was finding people who were the opposite of this awful picture that had been painted. Mm-hmm. And it was just awesome to not feel so alone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we'll stop there, but I really like how you ended that, because like I think a lot of what it makes furry amazing for me is it does bring you in contact with a lot of people that are similar and have similar interests and are just, you don't feel alone in a lot of the things that you initially thought were very isolating. And I love that. I love what you said there.
Yeah, no, just a lot of life's challenges are easier to face when you don't feel alone. And if you do feel alone, like, it is not forever. It is not permanent, and you will not feel that way forever. It may be a hard road to get there, but you will get there.
Yep. And just like you, sometimes you have to make those awkward steps to get there, right? For you, that was a very difficult thing to do, to embrace the awkwardness of going to a convention that was very scary, I'm sure, at first, but ended up being a life-changing event. Or for October. But it was a life-changing event for you. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for being here, TK.
Oh, yeah.
I think we are probably, I always say this and then it ends up being more or less, but I'm feeling 2 more episodes. Next episode, we'll talk about current TK, where you are in the fandom, some fun fandom related stories. And then I think our last episode will go into your charity work in the fandom and what that's meant for you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. With that, we'll go ahead and call it here. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. We couldn't do this without your support and you being here. So make sure you spread the word, hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks.